Hi, and welcome to Dream Talks. Super excited to introduce you to our guest today. This is an amazing woman that I met on a trip back home, a friend of mine, and she's just absolutely incredible. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's got so many stories to tell. She's an accountant, but not a typical accountant. She's a fearless single mom who also has military tactical training and is not afraid to stand up to anybody, including the IRS. So she even has a holster company, and she's deeply involved and integrated into her life and her practice, dreams and spiritual intelligence. So let's welcome Shanyn Stewart.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive into this.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on the show. There's just so much that we met. Gosh, I think it was over Thanksgiving, right?
I think so. Yes.
And we had coffee and I had a chance to talk, and I heard a little bit about your background, and I was just kind of blown away. And the stuff that we're doing in spiritual intelligence and in the dream world and all of this. And, somebody said that, man, you need to meet Shanyn. And I'm so glad that I did. And we wanted to interview you. And boy, you got some incredible stories to tell. I mean, there's some people that have some okay stories, and then there's blow you away type of stories. And you have the blow you away type of stories.
Definitely. The Lord has put me into situations where He has gifted me to actually be used in those situations. I saw a meme on Facebook the other day, and it said, you're being prepared for what is coming in your life. And I thought, oh goodness, if that's the case, I've already walked through some serious journeys. And so, we're never taken where we can't actually navigate out of. And using spiritual intelligence is really important, and it's available to everyone. I think that's what the key is when I think of what you're doing and the memos from the home office that I do. So.
Yes, I can't wait to get into memos. And, let's start on the dream side, though. You're a tax accountant, but you're more than a tax accountant. So explain to our guests what you do.
So I am a tax strategist. So I help entrepreneurs actually pay less. We don't realize that, our CPA is charged with filling out an error-free return. However, they're so busy doing that they often cannot be proactive. And so my firm is proactive tax planning. So we help to mitigate taxes for entrepreneurs in, mostly e-commerce, real estate, and so forth.
Wow, that's cool. So you do a little bit of financial advising, a little bit of tax stuff, a little bit of fighting with the IRS on behalf of wonderful business owners that may have got into a little bit of trouble. And so you're kind of the all-around tax ace in the hole that people need in their business.
Yeah, we really try to be, kind of all encompassing and holistic. So we try to be kind of that one-stop shop where people have the opportunity to know that they're getting tax strategy. I serve as a concierge CFO for clients. And then we do have a representation arm of our business as well. So if they have an IRS problem or they encounter an IRS problem, we can go to bat for them. And then we also have an investment arm as well.
Wow. So now the investment arm, you told me a story about the investment side, which I thought was super interesting. It involved a knock at your door one day. Yeah. And so tell us that story. I'd rather you tell it than me try to plagiarize it.
I have always, from the time I was actually a little girl, I've had dreams. So my first dream, I remember waking my mother up and saying, you need to go right now to Grandpa because he's had a stroke. He's going to be okay, but you need to go now. And I was about 10 or 11 at the time. And my mother would say, this is not right that you have these dreams. Like, this is not, like, she would try to dissuade me from telling people, well, I had a dream about you or what have you. But I've always had the ability to dream. And so as a financial advisor, when I have dreams about the markets, I pay attention. Now, one of the things is that you have to be very careful as a professional. You can't just go to your most clients who are not in tune to those people who dream or have prophetic ability to be able to say, I had a dream that the market was going to crash. They want you to back it up with facts and figures
Sure.
and statistics and indexes. So on several occasions from 2008, right before COVID, and then my most recent dream in June, I've been able to try to start to pinpoint what's happening in the market. Now, by saying that, when you pinpoint that the market's going to crash and you begin to move people to cash
Mhm.
without necessarily, that just by your gut, like, I'm moving you to cash because my gut tells me to. Sometimes government agencies and so forth, or if you're with a broker dealer as your arm of supervision, they don't really like that because
No.
you have to give a solid recommendation based on facts. And I've been told more than you can't go on your gut feeling because we live in a world of facts. And I do live in a world of facts and figures. I'm an accountant by trade. Um, However, when I've had these dreams and then I've moved subsequently my clients to cash, it can create like kind of like a red flag, like, why are you doing this? And I remember in the crash around 2008, I have money managers. So I have an RIA, and at the time I was with a broker dealer, and I have money managers, and I was like moving my people to cash prior to the crashes. And I had these money managers trying to talk me out of it. Like, look, things are going great. You shouldn't be concerned. Everything's going to be fine. And I was like, no, when I have a dream 3 nights in a row, that's kind of that's my pattern. And so we moved in 2008, we moved the markets were kind of jittery and we were
Yeah.
down about 10 or 11%. And I said, move to cash. Everyone tried to bulk at me. Some of my clients tried to bulk. Um, my supervisors at the time bulked, which created. I ended up in an audit for a couple of years because I couldn't. My gut told me to do something. I did it. It was the right thing for the client,
Hmm.
but it was questioned from that
Yeah.
standpoint.
So you have a pattern of having like three dreams. So you had three dreams culminating what, 3 days before the crash of 2008?
Well, it actually was about. It was about 3 months. So I have kind of a pattern as well. It was like 3 to 6 months usually prior to something happening. I
Hmm.
dream of it,
Okay.
but I will be given in my dreams markers. So I dream, and it's funny because like the dream I had in June, I'm always reading a newspaper,
Hmm.
like an old, like I can see the print. It's in black and white, and then I can see the graph of the markets in red.
Wow.
So that's kind of my visual to pay attention. Pay attention as I'm reading the paper
Uh-huh.
of what's happening on the graph of what the markets are going to do. So
Now, can you read the words in the newspaper?
I can.
Really? Because they say you're not supposed to be able to actually read anything in dreams. So it's fascinating that, that people are always like, well, how do I know if it's a God dream? I'm like, well,
Yeah,
I believe dreams come from God anyway.
I
But
do.
the idea that, there's these certain kind of urban myths around dreams that, well, God will never give you a dream about the stock market because, his purpose isn't just to make you rich, or God will. And I'm just like, I love how people put God in a box. And they're like, well, God would never make me afraid in
Yeah.
my dream. So if I have a bad dream, it must be from the devil. But so this is a dream about the stock market. You're reading a newspaper. You can read the print and you see an actual graph. Is this like the Dow Jones or the New York Stock Exchange? What is it?
It's the overall markets in general.
Okay.
What's really cool about, so backing it up, because after my whole 2-year audit that I went through, um, with the wonderful government agency, I was like, okay, whenever I started to have a dream, I wanted to back it up. And so one of a friend of mine, who actually I was featured in one of his books, he started taking what I was saying prophetically, and he has a client that is one of the leading data researchers in the world. I think he's actually in Great Britain, and he started taking the things I was seeing in the newspaper and lining it up statistically and factually with data to see if what I was dreaming was even probable.
Wow.
And he was able to take what I was seeing in my dreams against probable data and there was like a 95 to 100% accuracy, and what I was seeing could actually play out, and they were statistically actually predicting in some research that I knew nothing about that actually could take place.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, it's amazing. First of all, I mean, God speaks to us.
Mhm.
And dreaming is just one of those mechanisms where the voice of God, when our subconscious mind goes to sleep, can actually filter through.
Mm,
And so I think that all dreams are from God. I mean,
mm.
good dreams and bad dreams. I mean, if we
Amen.
look in the Bible of the warnings that God gave in
Yes.
dreams to his followers, I mean, how many
Yeah.
times did he actually, warn people in a dream?
Yeah. I mean, the first dream, the dream of Abimelech, the king.
Yeah.
This is a human trafficking king that God says, I'm going to kill you, your family, and all your people unless you give this guy his wife back. That wasn't a pleasant dream. I mean, the guy woke up thinking of impending genocide on his whole entire people. But he had the hope of knowing that he had a remedy of how to fix it. But yeah, I think it's so funny when people are like, well, this dream made me uncomfortable, and this dream this, and this dream that. And one of the things that I teach is the idea that what I call no nightmares. That all dreams, I believe exactly the same way that you do, that all dreams come from God. We've searched the scripture on every single dream, done a Bible study on every single dream in the Bible, and looked at every verse on dreams. And there's absolutely nothing biblically whatsoever to indicate the idea that dreams can come from the devil, or they can come from eating a piece of pizza, or from our soul, or whatever.
Yeah. I have a client who says to me, I had every time I eat cottage cheese, I have a bad dream. And I'm like, well, first of all, don't eat cottage cheese. I mean, that's maybe what God is showing you here. But I think one of the things I always get from clients is that God would not give me a dream that would help me be rich or be wealthy. And
Mm-hmm.
I always think of, in Genesis, in Jacob's dream,
Yes.
which basically was a strategy of wealth transfer. And I think that's so important that, God loves us so much, and everything in my mind. So I used to be a pastor as well. And, I used to teach that, everything that we have belongs to God, including the money and the wealth. And so why would he not give us dreams to protect that which is his?
So a gun-toting pastor escaping foreign countries. I'm not going to say the mafia was involved in any of your life, but I'm just saying you live an interesting life. You have a holster company, former pastor, now financial strategist, and prophetic seer dreamer. Wow. You you have an interesting life, Shannon.
I do. I'm very fortunate. I really, I'll tell stories. I'll share stories with like my mastermind groups and things. And they're like, this is only a Shannon story, and I think it's normal. Like
Yeah.
it's a normal everyday occurrence. Some of these things that happen in my life, because I think that when you start to come into a space where you walk with the Lord, but you walk in such a way that you expect, and you live in anticipation of dreams and miracles and signs and wonders, then you're more aware of them and you see them. And it becomes
Yeah.
a
Wow.
testimony to those people who haven't, who are working towards, being seers as well.
That's so good. That's so the dream you had about like the crash of 2008, you're reading a newspaper, you see the graph, it's going down. Did you have any idea of time frame? Was that all there was to the dream, or were there more details?
So in my dream, and so we were down about 11%, if I remember correctly, about that time. And
Mhm.
I remember talking to the money manager and being like, we need to move to cash now. Now in 2008, there weren't a lot of different mechanisms that you could use to have downside protection. So cash was like the only place we really could go. And
Sure.
so I remember saying we need to move to cash, and everyone balked from that standpoint. And I said, I saw in my dream a 50% drop. And everyone told me I was crazy, because
Mhm.
when had that ever happened and
Mhm.
known it's, since the Great Depression? And I said, well,
Mhm.
I had the dream 3 nights. And what, luckily, one of my money managers is a really strong Christian. So when I finally said, look, this was a dream from God, you pray on it and tell me. And he was like, he prayed, he came back, he's like, we're moving to cash. Now,
Wow.
now, from that standpoint, I just knew it wasn't necessarily like I saw it in my dream, the 50%. So I hear out of my right ear. I know that might sound funny, but I heard 50%. And the markets did continue to fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I lost 40%. They crashed in 2008 in my portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow, if only I would have known you back then.
Yeah. So, and I think what's pretty cool is, in June, so I have a group of kind of, so I have clients and so forth in a group that engage with me from that standpoint. And some of the things that we're seeing now, I had a dream in June of 2021. And so I laid out a timeline of what would be happening from the dream that I saw. But again, it was me reading a newspaper. This time, I saw certain things. I saw certain things holding steady. Like I saw in my dream silver holding steady. Now there have been some prophetic words that silver like doubles and so forth, but I heard it being consistent. And then around 2023 through 2025, I actually saw the dates on the calendar from that standpoint. And I kind of have everyone in a Telegram group, and I wrote in June of 2021 that the markets would begin to slip mid-December towards end of December and continue their slide. But it wouldn't be like a crash of 2008. It would be, I saw in the newspaper as I was reading it, it was a gradual, like, it was like, okay, the headline, September 22nd. I don't know what this means. September 22nd was September 22nd on the newspaper. And it said, markets fell continuously. So we were looking back over the year, and it wasn't a huge crash, but it just was a small, like an erosion of gains. Like we had given up all of our gains of 2021. And September 22nd was the date that was on that newspaper. So what I continued in my group as my timeline, I said, I read the article, and it said commodities will continue to grow in value through 2025, when you should be in a safe place by this time. Between 2025 to 2027, you should consider safety as your mechanism for all things. 2030 to 2031, the US and world will experience a financial meltdown that will last 7 years. I'm looking back in the paper over those 7 years. There will be depopulation, and markets around the world will be unsteady and crash. And of course, I always say you should pray about this because the Lord will speak to you as well. But that was a very 3 nights in a row in June of 2021. That was the dream that I had. So we began, my money managers and I began to strategically put together portfolios that would weather 2008. And we have started, people are in positions of those that were concerned, because there's always some clients who don't, they're like, we'll ride it out, we'll ride it out. But most of my clients have moved to positions that will weather a storm.
Wow, that's crazy. That's amazing. I love that. Cool. I would love to get a copy of those dreams if you have it. If you're able
definitely. Yeah, I can send those over to you.
Yeah, there's a pastor named Dana Coverstone that had 2 dreams in the middle of June of 2020, and they were all about what's happening and through everything of 2020 and into the election and all of that stuff. And I did a 38-page dossier on 3 dreams. And they're all 3 dreams you could fit probably on 1 page. And God just spoke to me, keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. And it related back to just incredible things, that some of which we saw happen, and I think some of which is yet to happen. So I'd be fascinated to see. So the pattern with you is you get like a warning, like 3 to 6 months in advance. And then as it gets closer, you have the dream again. Is that how it works?
I do. It's like, okay, this is a now moment. Like now is the moment. So like right around Christmas time, I was like, it's now. Like, let's move. Because I'd learned, because what would happen is I'd start to have the dream, and then I would tell my clients, look, I had this dream. And then they'd be like, oh, great. Here she is with the dream again. And we're 3 or 6 months out. Now, afterwards, they would be like, oh, she told us it was going to happen. But
Mhm.
now I'm a little bit more like, okay, Lord, I've got to have credibility with my clients. So you need to tell me when the now moment is. I've asked the Lord, like, you need to tell me the now moment. I need further direction. I need further guidance from that
Yeah.
standpoint.
Well, it's fascinating. Joseph interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh, those were economic dreams. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the first portfolio, or what we call dossier, in the Bible, where it's two dreams back to back that are interpreted at the same time to mean the same thing. And I always love when we teach, we talk about how he said the reason you had two dreams is because God says the matter is firmly decided and it will happen soon. And so I've had people that have had like three dreams, some people even three dreams in the same night. And they're like, John, what does three dreams mean? And I'm like, three dreams mean the matter is imminent. It's happening now or within the next several days. So it's interesting that when it gets to the point that you've had three of these dreams, like the market is moving right now. Put your money in a different place and prepare for what's coming.
Mm-hmm. And I actually have um, a Buddhist billionaire who lives out of the country that I am one of his advisors. We meet on a weekly basis just to guide him in business and in the markets.
So let's just tell the people you meet with him weekly to give him a prophetic word, but he doesn't call it a prophetic word, right?
He doesn't. No.
So this is the whole idea of memos from the home office, which when we first talked, you mentioned this book, Memos. I bought it that day, and I think I finished it that day or the next day. It's a really good read. It's amazing. And tell people the idea of memos from the home office.
So memos from the home office are simply a way that God speaks to us. So it's basically, it's not like a memo is not a crystal ball. It's guidance. It's insight. Oftentimes, we have in our own, I think everyone experiences that gut feeling, or they feel like they have a knowing. Well, a memo is just when I actually am working with a client, and it could be oftentimes we call them expert memos, because oftentimes we're working on business, taxes, that type of thing. But basically it is a way that that I listen for them on behalf of them, and what Father God has to say for them and for the situation that they're in. But it's not a crystal ball. It's not like I'm not a psychic. I can't tell the future, but it's just listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's listening for them, and guiding them of what I believe, you know, um, God is saying for their business, for their life, and so forth.
Now, who came up with the idea of memos from the home office?
So Perry Marshall, who is a friend and an internet guru. If you Google him, he is a marketing guru. He was, like wrote books, the 80/20 of Google AdWords, the 80/20 of Facebook. They just revised that recently with Mark Ingalls and Bob Rigneris. But Perry Marshall started years ago. He had a prophetic word, and he's an engineer by trade, and that kind of led him down a rabbit trail. So within his organization, his marketing organization, he offers call-in sessions where people can come in and actually get a memo. So that you get on a call, you're in a queue line, and you give your name, and he has people who give memos. So they'll say, okay, John, this is what we're hearing for you today. So out of that, I became an expert memo giver. So people would enroll with him and be funneled to me to actually have expert advice from a business standpoint and a memo standpoint, because oftentimes memos that people give are not necessarily related to business, because they're not business. They don't see from a business standpoint. So I give expert memos from a business standpoint for his organization. But that's kind of how it started, and it kind of grew. So he and his co-author, John Fancher, decided to put together a whole bunch of memo stories from all of our community of friends and community of their friends. And they created a book around our stories and around the path that Memos has taken through kind of the people that they know in what's called Planet Perry. So,
Now, this was the guy that got downloaded, what, the Google algorithm? Is that the guy that invented that?
yes, Yeah.
Yeah, so this guy is like top of his game, tech guy, business guy, just incredibly successful, who decided to get a couple of his friends together and write this book, the book about hearing from God. They call it Memos from the Head Office. Wow. I love it. I really enjoyed reading that book. It was really interesting because there was somebody else in that book that had already given me a prophetic word, and I was pleased to find that they were in the book. So not only did I know you, I knew somebody else too, but that was really cool. Wow. Now, dreams have taken you all over. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned something that happened that was an interesting story about China. Yeah. Tell us about the China dream.
So my dad, because of the love of a woman, married a woman from China, and they moved and retired to a little island in the South Pacific that's in China territory. Mm. And my dad was my best friend. We talked every day, 7 o'clock, we would Skype. But in October of 2014, I had seen him in June. So every June we had spent with him for the 14 years. And in June of 2014, I had a dream. And in my dream, I was told that my dad was going to die. In fact, it was so startling that I woke up. I kept, again, 3 nights in a row, I had the same dream, and my dad had died, and I wasn't there. And I was like, and if you know me, I was like, not on my watch. Like, this is not happening. So after having the dreams, I said to my father, I said, what's going on? I had a dream, and he says, I'm going to be dead before I see you again. And I was like, excuse me? And he goes, I'm going to die before I'm 65. And he was turning 65 in November of 2014. And I was like, no, you're like, again, I was like, not on my watch. Not on my watch. So I prayed, and the Lord said, you need to go to China. In fact, the dream was go to China. Go to China. You need to go to China. And so I moved everything around. And so the dream was so startling is it prepared me. It said, prepare not to come home from China. Mm. So I was a single mom. I had little ones. So this was 2014. So my son would have been 14. My daughter would have been 10 at the time. And I prepared my will, my trust. I told my mom like where the assets were, where the safety deposit keys were. Like I literally did not think I was coming back from China.
Wow.
I got on the plane. I kissed my kids. And I didn't say it directly to my kids, but I said to my mom, I said, in my dream, I was told not to prepare to come back. Mm. So you need to know that I've got to go save my father. So my father was not a Christian until 2000. I had the privilege of baptizing my father. Oh, wow. And I just knew like there was something so dramatic that was going to happen. I'm sorry, I'm tearing up even now talking about it. But I knew in my dream, the Lord told me to go. And so regardless if I wasn't coming back or not, I had to obey the Lord, period.
Wow.
So I went. So I went to China, and so I landed, and when I saw my father, so I'm a seer. So I saw my father, and I saw like the spirit of death. Like I saw it looming. And so that was it was around Thanksgiving time, I think. So November, because it took me time to get, you don't get an easy visa into China. You've got to kind of jump through some hoops. Right. Then on December 5th, my dad and I had just come from the doctors in the morning who gave him a clean bill of health. And he and I sat down. I was in the kitchen cutting up a pineapple. And he said, I don't feel so good. I turned around like, what's wrong? And as soon as I turned around to look at him, I saw him go head down. And he died at the kitchen table.
Oh my gosh.
So I lifted him up, of course I lifted him up and you kind of hear that death rattle, and I started CPR right away. So it was about 9 o'clock in the morning. Huh. We were still working on him at 3 in the afternoon. No heartbeat, no breathing. In fact, on the ride to the ambulance, I actually saw his spirit leave his body, and I was ticked. I was ticked off because I was like, you promised me you would never, we have a thing in our thing, Ohana means no one gets left behind. And I said, you promised me you would never leave me. Now you've forsaken me on this island. I don't know the dialect. I have no money. The officials don't know I'm technically here. And now you've decided to die. Like I literally was in the back of an ambulance yelling at him, right? Get back in here. I command life where there is death. I mean, I just was everything I could think of as a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the cool thing about God. In 2010-ish, I kind of exited from the church, and I went to a conference at Global Awakenings, Randy Clark. So Randy Clark used to be American Baptist pastor. I used to be American Baptist pastor. He had the move of the Holy Spirit through his church about the same time I did. Our denomination got wonky. So he had started Global Awakenings. I had gone to a seminar, and I remember sitting in the seminar with a man named Mahesh Javda. I don't know if I'm saying that correct.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he said, I remember sitting there, and I just was, when sometimes when you're in the church, you get wounded, and I was just feeling kind of yucky, and so here comes this man from India, and he comes up and he's pastoring this huge church in the United States, and he says, I've prayed for thousands who have died, and I've only raised 311. And I was hung on every word, because I was like, what? Like, people are still raised from the dead in the United States? Like, does that happen? And I remember sitting there thinking, when am I ever going to raise someone from the dead? Like, that doesn't happen, does it? And it was the first time I had seen the Shekinah glory. Like, it was all over him. And I just remember that moment. And so I'm in the back of this ambulance in Hainan, Zhonghai, China, and my dad's spirit leaves his body. And now we're in the like field hospital, not like what we think of hospitals, like, just this room, and everyone's working on him, and there's no heartbeat, and I'm breathing for him. It was my eye, sorry. I'm breathing for him. His friend is doing compressions. And about 3:00 in the afternoon, a government official came in, and he said, we need to talk to you. And so they said, where do you want to send the body? And I cried out in such a way. I cried out in a tone that I'd never heard come out of my body before. It was almost like what I imagine when they say when Jesus was crucified and the veil ripped.
Mm-hmm.
It was such a cry that came from the very depth of my soul. And when it happened, it was like it shook the room. Like everyone stopped. And when I sunk to the floor, we heard him go, and there's beep, 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 beep. Because I just remember crying out, I command there to be life. I said the same, and I remember the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead dwells within me. And now I command life where there is death. And I screamed. And he came back.
Wow.
It all started with a dream. All started with a dream.
Wow.
So, and then it was a journey to bring him home, to get him off the island. And we had 9 glorious months with him. He actually was able to reconnect with my brothers who he was estranged from. He reconnected, and they built a bond, and he got to say goodbye to family members and deal with some things that he needed to deal with before he eventually transitioned again.
Wow. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What a story. I'm not crying, you're crying. Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the next part. I mean, it's just like wave upon wave of stuff that's happened with you and that God has warned you about or told you about or given you intel on. Man, I want us to talk about the story of your brother.
Yeah.
And what happened there.
Yeah. So,
and that even fits into the memos from the head office too.
It does.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
So I've had several. So my little brother, Bryce, 20 years younger than I. So I kind of was more like a mother figure than a sister figure. And, my brother was very entrepreneurial. I was trying to train him to come into work for my business and so forth. But, and we talked often, and all of a sudden he just disappeared. And it was weird because you know, when you just know something's wrong. So this was
Mm.
before something was not right. And so this was like a Tuesday or Wednesday. I sent him a message and said, hey, what's up with you? There's something wrong. Something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, hey, it's cool. I'm good. I'm like, I don't think so. What's wrong? And I didn't get really a reply.
Mm.
Um, on a Friday evening, my brother came to me in a dream. He sat on the edge of my bed and he told me he was gone. Told me he had
Mm.
died. In fact, he told me he was murdered. Told me who
Oh,
murdered
wow.
him. Gave me
He
the
told you who
name.
murdered him.
Yes. Gave me the
Wow.
name. Told me to tell the detectives to look in the trunk of his car for the blood.
Oh,
He's like, they're going to say it's a drug overdose. It's not. Tell the detective to look in the trunk of the car at the blood. And they
wow.
dumped my body. Him and her dumped my body. Well, he became a missing person.
Mm.
You know, we did everything we could as far as flyers and radio and newspapers. Um,
Now, how many days had he been missing when you had the dream?
he wasn't technically missing yet.
Oh my goodness. So you had no idea what was going on at that point.
No, he wasn't answering messages. He wasn't answering Facebook. You know how like you go on Facebook Messenger and you can see when they were last active?
Yeah, yeah.
When I had gone on there like last active 11 hours ago.
Wow.
So this was very it was like when he transitioned, he came to me right away.
Oh, wow.
Um, but then, you know, you should, again, getting myself in trouble because the detective, when the detective reached out to me for questioning, I said to him, my brother's dead. He came to me in a dream. And I said, my brother told me to ask you about the blood in the trunk of the car. And he goes, well, how do you know about the blood in the trunk of the car? And I go, because my brother told me in a dream. Did you not understand what I just said to you? I'm a dreamer. My brother told me in a dream. And he said, well, ma'am, we have to go on facts. Got to go on facts. Can't go on
Mm.
dreams. Um, you know, um, and so from that standpoint, it was very difficult because I knew that my brother didn't run off, that he didn't just disappear, that he didn't go start a life someplace else, that he was gone. Um, and so a year goes by, a year. So that was August. And Labor Day of the following year, they find his body. Now, in the middle of that time, I had gone and worked with someone for another memo from the home office for them to actually give us more insight. So I
Mm-hmm.
went to a friend of mine. I said, I know you get memos. Am I crazy? He's dead, is he not? Well, let me go back here. Talk about Perry Marshall's memos from the home office.
Yeah, you were on a call or something and they
I
saw your
was.
name. Yeah.
Yes. So they saw my name and they said, if you hold the line, if you have somebody else you want us to listen for, please tell us. So I decided I'm going to wait. And this was like my first memo call. Now, I wasn't involved in the community real in depth and so forth yet. And so I said, I need to know about Bryce. And so the gal says, you know, he's showing me that he's looking down, like he's looking down from the planets. He's showing me outer space and he's looking down from a new perspective and he
Mm.
sees things so much clearer.
Mm.
But it's like he's in mud or muck. Like he's telling me like he sees things so much clearer. Things weren't what he thought they were, but he feels trapped. And then the next one said, well, it's like he's in a periscope out of a submarine and he's looking around and he sees things everything is so much clearer now. But like but that was my cue. When I heard those things, I literally went to bed for 3 days and just sobbed because that was my confirmation. He saw things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
He was no longer here on this earth. He was looking down
Mm-hmm.
on this earth.
And stuck in the mud too, and that's where they found him, right?
They did. He was buried in
Wow.
a shallow grave, in like a really like a river, like, like as you come, well, you're from the area, so near Detroit River, there's like marsh area on the Windsor side, and they found him there. And the person who I told the detective murdered, was involved in his murder, was one of them that was convicted on lesser charges. The people that were convicted on lesser charges, but they were convicted.
Now, didn't your brother, when he appeared to you in this dream, he gave you like the details? He said, here's how they murdered me. Here's where I am. Here's where the body is. It was these 4 people involved. And you had probably a very strange discussion with the police officer where you said, where he then came back to you with, listen, ma'am, we can't go on dreams. We got to go on facts and blah, blah, blah. And then wasn't it like a month or 2 later that they apprehended one of the people that you told him was involved? But
actually, it was a year later.
A year later. Wow.
It was a year later. So it was Labor Day that we found his body. And I did the funeral. And one of the things is when I looked in that room, I knew the people who were involved were in that room. That was so hard. But I was coming back from a meeting. I belonged to a mastermind, or belonged at the time to a mastermind of Perry Marshall's. And I was coming back from Chicago, and the detective called me on the phone. I was in like that Chicago loop that, like you're stuck in traffic. Yeah. And he called me and he said, we've apprehended. So one of them had already been apprehended. The other one, this woman, got away. She was in custody and she got away. I was like, how does someone get away? Like you just turn around, like you didn't handcuff her, you didn't put her in the back of the car. Well, if I learned anything, so Perry Marshall's a marketing person. And so I learned enough about Facebook ads to actually know that we could target where this girl was. So I said to the detective, where is this girl? And he told me the town. And I said, have you tried social media? Like, let's put it on social media. And again, Miss Stewart, that's not how we operate. Like, we can't use social media to catch criminals. We've got to like go by the book. And I was ticked. So I'm a little bit fiery. And so I was like, well, you know what? If you won't do something about it, I will do something about it.
Now, is this when you pulled over and you prayed and God was
like, because first of all, I'm not a marketer by trade. Like I have a marketing team.
Yeah.
I know enough to be dangerous.
Sure.
That's the extent, like, right?
Yeah.
Like I know about like cost per acquisition. Like, I mean, like I'm getting the numbers. So I had my daughter with me and we pulled over to like one of those little things over the Chicago roadway where like, it's like a little rest stop. And I just went to the Lord. Like I was just having conversation because I just was not happy. Like I was irked. And I was like, you know what, Lord, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous that my brother was murdered and everyone's going scot-free. And he was a child of God and I'm a child of God. And now I want justice.
Wow.
And he was like, Facebook. Again, I hear Facebook ad. And I'm like, I've never done this. So in my car, we did a Facebook ad, and Perry Marshall had taught in one of his classes somewhere along the line how to do like the geographical, like create your lookalike market. And if you have the zip code, you can like pinpoint it to the zip code and you can throw money behind it so that, you might be paying $100 per click. But every time somebody in a certain zip code opens up their Facebook, they're going to see your ad. So I put up an ad saying this so-and-so is missing. And I'm looking for this specific person. And I need anyone who knows where this person is for a reward to reach out.
Wow.
So what happened was some gal opened her Facebook who happened to be the aunt of the girl who was sleeping on her couch and said, I think I have your person.
Now, weren't you on the road talking to the police officer, pulled over, prayed, and God said, she's in Ontario at her aunt's house in the basement, sleeping on the couch.
Yep.
And you told the cop, and the cop's like, we can't use this kind of information. We need and that's when you decided to use the geofencing around like 25-mile radius of the aunt's house. And didn't the aunt call the police and say exactly what did she say when she called the police?
Basically, she's like, my niece is sleeping on my couch. Because then
Just what you told the police officer.
the detective was like, "You're not gonna believe this, but she was sleeping on her aunt's couch." I'm like, "No kidding." Like you're just
Just
like,
like I
okay,
told you.
you just like I told you. And
Wow.
but you know, God speaks to everyone.
Mhm.
If we can be trained to hear.
Mhm. Wow.
So yeah, yeah,
That's so good. And here's a picture of you and your brother.
yeah. That was actually taken at my father's funeral the
Oh,
second time he
wow.
passed. So yeah.
Wow. It's so good that your dad was brought back to life and led to the Lord and brought back home and got back together with your brother. And wow, it's just so interesting in the midst of tragedy, like how God has just weaved, a tale through your life using prophetic words and dreams and spiritual intelligence. I mean, it's absolutely amazing what he's done in your life.
It is. And I always think people are always like, wow, what a journey. Um, but God never promised us that it's going to be easy.
Hmm.
Look at the characters in the Bible. They
Hmm.
didn't have it easy, you know. But can have confidence that even today there are still miracles that we can still walk within um, with spiritual intelligence,
Hmm.
um, and navigate the world that we live in a little bit easier.
Wow. Wow, that's just amazing. That's incredible. So this is your life. I mean, this is kind of you do a lot of really cool stuff, including multiple companies and advising people all over the world and tax strategies and all of that. But God, in the midst of it, whether it's family, whether it's personal situations, whether it's hearing God for somebody else, God will give you dreams and He will speak to you. It will whisper in your right ear,
Hmm.
so you're hearing right.
Yes, correct.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, we have a listening audience that is absolutely passionate about hearing from God in dreams. But even beyond that, most people that hear from God in dreams also hear from God either word of knowledge or in the prophetic of some sort.
Hmm.
And so people are always asking, like, how do I get, because people are having dreams about human trafficking, or they're having dreams about like the geopolitics or what's going to happen in the country or different people. And they're always wanting to know, like, what do I do with this information? What's going to happen with this information? Or how do I train myself to hear better? So, what would you say to somebody that says, I really want to hear like you hear, and I want God to speak to me in a way with such clarity that you do?
You know, so again, this is something that Perry Marshall taught me is something called Renaissance time. So every morning I wake up and I spend my quiet time doing prophetic journaling and just listening. So listening is a skill that we gain. So it's not just something, I mean, I hate to say it, but I feel like we have to put the work in. We have to make the time to get quiet and to listen and to ask the Lord, what is it that you're showing me today? What is it that you would have me to know? And
Mm,
then start to learn to discern your voice from his. I do that through prophetic journaling. So I'll just write like, good morning, Lord, what would you have me to know today?
mm,
And I just begin to write, to flow with whatever is coming to my mind. I also go to sleep with an intention oftentimes. Like I'll say, Lord, if I have a client that I'm listening for, Lord, I'm listening for Mr. Smith. What is it that you want Mr. Smith to know? And then I'll go to sleep.
mm.
And then the Lord will tell me in a dream what it is that he has for that client.
How often does he answer that same night when you have a
Not
question?
always. I sometimes have to ask, you
Hmm.
know, I have to continue to, hello, Lord.
Yeah.
We got Mr. Smith over here who needs a word from you. And then sometimes what I will hear is like, I've given him a word for himself. And I'll be like, ooh, okay.
Oh.
So sometimes my prophetic gift is not necessarily all loving and kind. I'm one of those, I kind of have a prophetic gift that sometimes I'm called to like tell you like it is.
Mm.
Like the Lord has said this and you've ignored it.
Boom.
Yeah. So, and I'm okay with that. I know that not all those with prophetic giftings are all in loving kindness. It's always truth and love, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. So many people talk about It's intimacy, it's intimacy, it's intimacy. And it's almost like they think we have to earn our way into God's lap. And, you know, I was so driven as a business person, like I wouldn't slow down for nothing. It wasn't until God completely dried up everything in my life and said, nothing's going to work until you rest. And it was during that time, it's like 3 to 6 months. I just laid on the floor of the prayer house in Redding, California, and did absolutely nothing. And I was so frustrated because I'm like, I'm not even saying anything. Like if I was still Catholic, at least I'd get points for saying Our Father, you know, 400 times a day. But, you know, and then after like 2 weeks, I just, you know, it worked out of me, that desire to have my agenda when I approached the Lord. And it was just, what's on your heart, Papa? And I started getting open visions, and I started hearing strategies for city transformation. And suddenly I realized God is like super chatty. He's just waiting for the people that really want to listen.
Yeah. I just had yesterday, I had a movie producer's wife reach out to me. And she is going through a spiritual awakening. And so her and I are going to work together in an engagement to help her learn to listen. And when I said to her, you know, it begins, first of all, his burden is easy and is light. So if it feels like work, you're probably trying too hard.
Yeah.
And it really starts with rest. It really does.
Wow.
Because when I'm not rested, so I'm a workaholic. I admit it. I'm a go type A personality. But I know that when I'm not rested, I'm not hearing as well.
Wow.
I just know that about my walk with the Lord. So I have to go and I have to just be, you know, get off the social media, get off the phones, get off the computer, and just spend time with the Lord. And and I don't know about you, like I definitely have been in places that are thinner in my mind, where it's easier for me to connect with the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
I think that's important too. Find a place that you can cultivate the Spirit. So like in my house downstairs, we play Christian music all day long. In my offices, it's always going. We always want to create an atmosphere where the presence of the Lord, the presence of the Holy Spirit is always welcome.
So you play worship music and you just kind of keep your sacred space sacred, huh?
Definitely.
Wow. I love how, you know, so many people, at least I used to, my quiet time would consist of, you know, a long list of, okay, God, here's the people that I need you to touch and bless. And here's the things in my life that I'm concerned about, and good talk, you know, and wouldn't hear anything and wonder why, I wonder why I'm not hearing. And then when it just became, you know, I had a phrase that actually I feel like God gave me during that time of really learning deep rest. And the phrase is, I came into your presence seeking to find answers. And I stayed until the questions no longer mattered.
Amen. Yeah, that's excellent.
And I love that, how you get up in the morning and instead of, here's my list of people I'm going to pray for, you just pull out your pen, expecting to hear from God, and say, what do you want to tell me today? That's so cool. And at night too, you do that. We teach people, why don't dream? I'm like, do you ask for dreams? Well, you can do that. Well, yeah. Like, do you write your dream down when you get them? Well, you know, I know what dreams come from God. Okay. So it's got to be so vivid that he's got to slap you upside the head with a 2x4 for you to think it's significant. What if you wrote every single thing in a dream down? Everything. Even if it's just, I've had people wake up and hearing one word, and it's been an entire study on their identity and destiny that a stranger who didn't know anything about them was able to unpack, or 5 numbers in a series. And they're like, I heard 50366. I have no idea what it means. And God showed us 4 different things that it meant that all culminated into one story. And it was about the combined federal code. And I mean, it was crazy, the kind of stuff that God will show you if you're willing not only to listen, but to search it out. And that's exactly what you...
Yeah, and I think that's the key there, because sometimes you'll hear something and you'll not know what it means because it might be for someone else. But if you're in a community of people that you can share that with, oftentimes I've found that the Lord, like something like that, well, what does that mean? Well, you may not know, but someone who you're in community with may hear the rest of the story.
Wow. That's so cool. Well, we're going to include your information below when we post this. So if people want to get in touch with you, they can. Also, again, the book is Memos from the Head Office. I got it on Audible, but you can get it on Audible or Amazon or anywhere books are sold. When are you coming out with your book?
It's in the works.
You have so many cool stories, and I know we just barely scratched the surface on some of the high points of the more dramatic things. But if you wanted to leave us with a closing thought related to spiritual intelligence, hearing from God, or dreams, what would it be?
I think that it's about, if you want to be able to hear, to dream, to have memos from a home office, it's all about getting into the habit and cultivating a lifestyle of listening.
That's so good. Cultivating a lifestyle of listening. I love that. So cool. Wow. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We sure appreciated having you. And I just appreciate who you are and what you're doing for so many people around the world. And wow. All right. That was Shanyn Stewart. She's just incredible. We're so excited that she could be here with us. And let that inspire you and encourage you to want to seek to hear the Lord more clearly, both in visions and dreams, in words of knowledge. Just listen to him, expectant of what he's going to share with you. And we have some resources too. If you're looking to want to hear deeper or to get deeper into what we call spiritual intelligence, watch this, and we'll see you next time here on Dream Talks. In 2018, a conversation between two friends sparked the question, if we really believe we can hear from God in dreams, visions, prophecy, why isn't there a full-time intelligence agency using these gifts to help keep America safe? Over the next year, the need for this agency was confirmed through multiple dreams, and the Spiritual Intelligence Service was born. Spiritual intelligence is the gathering and analysis of information from righteous spiritual sources to formulate a conclusion and facilitate actionable intelligence. In the Spiritual Intelligence Mentorship, also known as SIM, we will teach you to interpret dreams by hearing the voice of God directly, including dreams from and about U.S. presidents. As part of SIM, you will have a role in decoding divine messages used to advise world leaders and impact current events. There is a place for you in SIM. Join us today at spiritualintel.com.